Hey everyone, welcome to another Game of Thrones Tower Battle breakdown. This is for episode 4 of season 6, The Book of the Stranger. As always, I am Julian and Meush. I am joined by Daniel D'Souza.
Yo.
And it is a lot earlier in the morning than we normally record this. So apologies in advance if we sound tired. I probably still have a morning voice. Or B, we seem slightly more underprepared. Because,
a little fuzzy.
Yeah, everything is just, fuzzy's a good word. I'm not quite there yet, but maybe by halfway through the show, everything will come together and I'll be okay. So we'll see. It's a really good episode, so I'll probably get excited about it and start talking about it. Well, I'll start talking a lot more quickly, that's for sure. And then by the end of the show, you guys won't even understand me. I don't drink coffee. That if I drank coffee, that might help, but I'm not a coffee drinker. So anyway, yeah. So. Apologies in advance, like I said. And so let's start this week with, I guess, a couple emails or comments. It wasn't super about a lot of them, but there was one from Kirsten Guevara.
Yeah.
She was like right on with basically her whole predictions here. She sent a lengthier email basically asking about Jon Snow's resurrection and why and how he might be different, and basically her whole thing was that he lost his sense of responsibility, and that may be true, but she basically ends with my guess is that or he's basically asking, why does everyone think that he's going to be marching on Winterfell sometime in the future? And he's like, well, my guess is that he runs into Sansa, and then he says, I can't stand any more Stark misconnections, which is fair, and then she begs for his help, and he gains help from the only people that he has respect from now, Tormund and the Wildlings. So he was basically right on with every prediction there. Or sorry, I said she was right on with every prediction there. I told you it was early in the morning. I warned you guys. And so that's awesome. Thanks for the email. She also said that she was our favorite follow-up podcast for the show. So that's really nice. Thank you. For everyone else who wants to send any questions, you can send us any questions to our email, towerbabblepodcast@gmail.com. And you can shoot us any questions on Twitter @towerbabblecast, and facebook.com/towerbabblecast as well. Find all the stuff we do at our website, towerbabblepodcast.com. So, what is there any other? I think there might have been a couple tweets. So hey, you guys remember last week we had I was mentioning how people were getting down on us for being too negative, and so I had a couple people follow up basically saying they felt bad for saying we were being too negative. So, it was just like a back and forth of people feeling guilty. So let's not continue the circle of guilt and just say, we're going to try not to be super negative, and we appreciate you guys not trying to be super pushy. And and Cameron Martinez on Twitter mentioned that he agreed with me that Dany's storyline is super fuzzy. On you too, Dan. I think super boring. Jeez, it's still way too early. You thought it was boring too. I'm not the only one who came down on that.
Up until this episode, but
right, which is everything became a lot less boring this episode. We had John Bennett on Twitter ask what we thought Bronn was up to, and that's a good question. I haven't seen him for now 4 episodes. I mean, he's not like a major player in the series, so it's not like I miss him because he's entertaining to watch.
He's awesome,
but
I kind of get the impression that he's. Well, maybe not completely out, but he was, living the simple life. He's kind
of like, well, that's enough adventure for me.
He's made his fortune.
Isn't that kind of what he was getting
He's got a cushy little gig there. He's just going to chill out and do that.
Does he have his own keep now? Does he have his own little castle?
Yeah, they made him a lord. I'm pretty sure.
There you go. We had Patrick Johnson ask how about that amazing look Kit Carrington gave before he cut the rope last week. Mm-hmm. He knew exactly where he was sending them. superior acting, which I totally agree. And we didn't mention it when we were recording last week, but that look he gives before he cuts the rope in that scene is pretty great, and it really does like shine a light on some of the things that might be going through his head now that he's back from the dead. So that's great. And then yeah, I think that's most of them for this week. And again, so Tower Babble at Tower Babblecast on Twitter, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast. Send us what you think, and we always like to chat with the listeners, so that's always fun. Should we get into the episode then?
Yeah, let's start.
All right, it's a big one, so we got lots to cover.
Yeah,
it is directed by Daniel Sackheim, same guy as last week. We talked about him last week. And again, this is season 6, episode 4, Book of the Stranger. And what do you think the name for that? What do you think they got that name for?
Well, they referenced it in the scene with Marjorie and the High Sparrow. I assume that's what it's all about. I predicted that it'd be Arya, and Arya wasn't even in this episode.
Yeah, I feel like people were really... it's hard for me to say, but I think book readers were predicting something. Obviously, I'm not asking you to tell me what it was, but apparently book readers are expecting something about that this week, and that's not what happened. But other cool stuff happened, so you can't really complain too much. So are you still waiting for something in particular with Arya that hasn't happened?
Not something specific. I just out of all the storylines, I thought it was most relevant to hers.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess now if it's just weird to name this episode, which is pretty great in general. If I could just skip ahead to my overall thoughts, really liked it. A lot of fun. This is like, I wouldn't say classic Game of Thrones, but it had a lot of the spectacle and awe that we reached from the show that hasn't been around for a little while. Yeah. But yeah, so Castle Black. That's where the episode starts. And I was mentioning that I just thought it was weird that they would name it Book of the Stranger after one conversation they have, halfway through, when there's so many cool things.
There's a lot of other big stuff happening.
Yeah. All right, so we started Castle Black as we have for the last 3 weeks, and we have Dolorous Ed kind of checking out Jon's sword. Still my favorite sword in the show. I mean, Do you have a favorite? If it's not this one, do you have a favorite?
Well, Ice was pretty cool before they melted it down.
Right, but
now it's Oathkeeper for Brienne.
That's a pretty cool sword too, but it's not quite.
Well, they don't really showcase a lot of the other famous swords. So Longclaw's definitely the coolest.
Longclaw gets a lot of love, and it's got the coolest what's that called? The top
pommel.
of the handle. Pommel. It's got the coolest pommel. And Valyrian steel, so that's always cool. But let's not concentrate on the sword. Anyway, the point is, Dolorous is trying to convince him, or him being Jon Snow, not to take off. And he's basically mentioning everything that that us as listeners or watchers or viewers. Jeez, it's still early. Sorry. That you were there at Hardhome. You saw what's coming. You can't. What are you gonna do? You're just gonna walk away from that? And he's kind of saying,
turn your back, yeah.
I mean, yeah. He's like, well, yeah, that's kind of the plan. He wants to go on vacation.
Yeah, he's turning his back on the Night's Watch, and he's just gonna try to live his life as short as it will be, to the best of his abilities, really.
Which is fair. I mean, I feel like if he really wanted to, if he headed down south all the way to maybe say Dorne or something, right? Kind of change, didn't go by Jon Snow. No one really knows who he is, right? Then he could probably live out the rest of his life without even noticing what's happening. Although it's hard to say what the timeline is for the rest of the stuff, the coming White Walkers and all that. I mean, imagine it's a bit shorter than that. But even if, I don't know, I'm speculating here. I don't think it would work out for him.
Probably not. But what I like about those, we were talking last week about how it doesn't, I didn't think it made sense for his character to just kill them and then walk away, but that's because we didn't really know how he had been changed. So we see now he comes back changed in that he comes back kind of doubting himself and his the way that he lived his life. and he doesn't really have any overarching goal anymore. There's nothing on the horizon. He's just going to get away from this negative place, and he's almost scared sometimes. It's interesting.
He said, I guess what did he say? He said like, I can't stay here. My brothers murdered me. Like you can't expect me to just hang around now. It's like how it makes sense. Like how could you possibly, the ultimate betrayal, you know? And it's like, so you can't be expected to just carry on like nothing changed. Everything changed. And then you get the horn at the gate. So how do the horns work? One for one blast
for rangers returning, 2 blasts for wildlings, and 3 for others.
Right, but this has nothing to do with that because it's from the other side of the.
Yeah, it's just open the gates.
Okay, and it's Sansa. Who would have expected that? Like, I was hoping it would come this fast, and I was saying like if she doesn't get there by this episode, I'd be pretty pissed off. Remember saying I said that? Well, guess what, guys? I'm not pissed off. I'm pretty happy about it because she got here right on time, right before Jon was leaving. I thought they might have done like they were gonna pull out like a fast one on us, right, and have Jon taking off because that episode is like, or at the beginning it looks like he's like getting ready to leave, you know, in the next
he's taking his last meal there.
Yeah, and then even if that was the case, she arrived right on time, so it's perfect. And then that scene right at the beginning, this is the first, well, I guess a second scene, but all in one location here. Then when she comes in and they like are like see each other for the first time, I'm like, I started like breaking down.
It was heartwarming there
because that's like, this was the last time. It's been a long. First of all, I don't think there's been 2 Starks reunited since Bran,
like season 1.
No, Bran and Rickon were still together until in season 3. At the end of season 3, but they were never separated, right? And that's it. That's the only one. And then Arya and Sansa almost met up. But yeah, like it's always been close calls. This is the first one, and here's the thing that I didn't even realize, but they actually have never had a scene together on the show before. Even in the first episode of the first season, the pilot episode, Kit Harington and or Jon Snow, I guess in this case, Jon and Sansa never have a scene together, but you wouldn't know it based on this one, you know. And then they have of course they have a really nice scene after of them just catching up and addressing those same things, like, yeah, she was kind of a bitch.
She was more than a bitch to him, yeah.
Just a jerk. She just wasn't a nice person at that time.
She just was like above him. She thought herself above him and didn't really consider him a part of the family back then.
And you know, obviously that when you don't have very much family left, you'll take what you can get, I guess. It's funny, like with all this, like, you're my brother, we have to get our family, like this, you're our family, we have to take our families home back and all that stuff. And then it's funny because we might find out that she's not related to them at all in the next, episode or 2.
Well, he'd still be related to them. He'd just be a cousin, not a brother.
Yeah, yes, that's true.
He's still a Stark by name. Like, he would still be the Stark in Winterfell. Or he's not a Stark by name, rather, but he could be if he was legitimized.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, it's all very confusing. Who would do that, and how would that work, and whatever. But
and if we're all right about the R plus L equals J thing, then he'd be a Targaryen, right?
Yeah.
Like by name.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's all.
So that would be a whole different. That'd be a whole different thing. Okay, so what else happens here? That's, again, really love the scene, the opening scene, just heartwarming in general. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's like finally
watch this
something
episode
good
today. Just because there's a lot of good feels in this episode, a lot of good things happening. That you don't. It just specifically in one episode, bunch of reunions, like positive, awesome things are happening. And that's just not something we get a lot of on Game of Thrones. So you take what you like when you get it, and you get it this much, like a big spoonful like this. You kind of have to sit back and appreciate it for a minute before you look out. Like, and the best part is that, like, some of the stuff that happens in this episode that is good is like set up for even more good stuff if it all goes as planned. So,
or set up for tragedy, but
or of course, yes.
You have to like take it with a
more
grain
likely.
of salt here.
Yeah. All right. So, anything else happened? They approached you.
I mean, Tormund made eyes at Brienne.
Oh right, yeah,
funny.
and that's apparently Twitter's blowing up about that.
Of course, it is.
Like shipping, right? Like that's a term in television.
Yeah.
Where people like basically become fans of two people getting together in a relationship, and they start relationshipping them, and in their head as like fan fiction, shipping they call it.
It's one of those things they ship people do ships of Jon and Sansa because they're not technically blood related, right? Like that's pretty weird. Like they grew up as brother and sister.
Who does those?
People do. People want that to happen. People think that they could be the king and queen of the North.
I don't know those people, and I don't want to know those people. I guess the last takeaway from this part of Castle Black is when Sansa's basically saying, "Well, we need to go and we have to go get Winterfell back, take it back from the Boltons, and basically we need to do something about this asshole over here who raped me, and you're my brother. You have resources, you can help." And he doesn't want to, right? He's like,
which is really interesting, kind of reversal of characters here. Like Sansa's finally taking charge of her life and doing something, and finally, not just the victim. And Jon doesn't know what to do. Yeah.
Well, he's kind of being a big mope. He's just not. He's a sad sack. He's everyone. It's like, oh, poor Jon Snow came back to life, and now he's sad. Like, get your shit together.
Yeah, it's been a whole episode already. Come on.
Yeah, it's like, come on. It's like been like almost 24 hours here. Like, get your life together. I guess, okay, so he doesn't want to. He's reluctant, of course. Plus, you think, okay, what are his actual resources? And they address that later. We'll get to that. But so this is where we're seeing the change in Jon. Jon before, given the chance now, like with the out, which he addresses in this episode about the whole loophole in the Night's Watch oath thing, that he probably would have jumped at the chance to help his sister and his family in the further south.
Are you saying before he died?
Right, yeah. Before he died, given the chance, with some kind of loop. No, because he tried to leave once before, but his honor kept him from leaving. But given the chance with a loophole that said, "Hey, you could leave," although he didn't get. Well, he did. I guess what's his name did offer him one. Stannis did. But he still. No, right.
I think before all this happened, his vows to the Night's Watch dictated his life, and he would have, like, as difficult as it would have been, he would have stayed out of the wars in the south. That's what. His friends brought him back when Robb was killed, or when Ned was killed, rather.
Yeah.
But when Robb was killed, he was just like, "No, I can't do anything about this."
Yeah. I mean, okay, so he has the loophole now, but he still doesn't want to help Sansa. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, but I don't think that has anything to do with the Night's Watch.
He wants to leave anyway. Yes, exactly. Well, he's not. He's already said he's leaving the Night's Watch.
Yeah, but he says he's sick of fighting. He's sick of all the battles that's at the end of the day ended up being pointless, right?
And when he said he's lost, he's like, "Well, I fought and I lost, and now."
And now he's done fighting for a bit, but that's not going to be true.
Well, no, he's not. Anyway, so there's also one other scene where Melisandre and Davos have a quick chat in the courtyard, and Davos has finally gotten around to asking about Shireen. Like, I don't know what took him so long. You were asking about this a couple weeks ago. You're like,
yeah, and then they made it seem like the news about Stannis was a revelation to him as well. Like, he didn't know.
Yeah, I don't know what he was expecting. Like, oh yeah, he just came back without Stannis or anyone else, and you weren't going to mention anything. They're just, it's probably fine. They're just camped outside. He just doesn't want to talk to me right now. Like what did he expect was going on?
So that was kind of weird. But yeah, he finally addresses Shireen. Doesn't get a straight answer.
He doesn't get any answer really, because Brienne decides to just walk up and be like, "By the way, I murdered him. I know what you did." It's like, "I know what you did last summer" moment there, and it's so weird. Like, I remember watching the scene, and it just like Brienne walks up, and not only does she walk up, she's holding her sword in her hand, like it's not sheathed, she's just holding it, and just having this quick, brief conversation with these two. They kind of look at her with like this weird like, okay, we get it. You didn't like Stannis very much, and then she just walks away, and she's holding her sword. She's just holding her sword. I don't like. I just couldn't help but think like, where are you going with the sword just out like that, and like, what do you have to do, and why are you holding your sword like that? Like, it just doesn't. I thought that was a strange choice on their part. Like, was she trying to be intimidating? She's already way taller than everyone there. It's pretty intimidating.
Yeah, you could tell that she was intimidating. Just the way they were looking at her.
So, and I thought that was kind of.
Well, it's kind of weird to just have a character kind of almost teleport in, say her piece, and just leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it could have been a little bit more organic than that.
The scene, the whole thing is strange. Like, the timing of this conversation between Davos and Melisandre, like, that conversation could have happened. I mean, I understand lots of stuff was going on, but like, that could have happened a long time ago. 3 episodes ago, maybe. And then for Brienne to just jump in like that is even more strange. So.
Oh, whatever. They got the point across.
And there's one other weird part is like when Jon and Sansa are having a conversation, like when they're catching up there at the beginning here. I guess we missed a whole portion where he fills her in about having died and came back to life. Because
that's implied.
Yeah, it's like, and that's not even like a big deal. They're just having a nice chat, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like when you came back to life, like everyone like they respect you." Like, it's like, wait, you're just gonna like that's not shocking to you in any way. Like, that's just run of the mill stuff, I guess. In the North, I don't know.
Skip right over that stage.
Too. I mean, I guess you don't need to see the conversation where that she learns that information, but like, maybe Jon would have chosen not to mention it for a little while, just out of like, there's more pressing things to talk about. It's gotta be
a weird conversation to have with somebody.
Yeah.
So the other day,
by the way, long time no see. I kind of was murdered. I've been pretty busy. I saw undead ice zombies. Like, do you think he did like the whole backstory? Like, so there's this place called Hardhome. Me and this ice zombie had like a stare down. There was a giant there. I don't know if you saw him on the way in. Like, so I don't know. That's kind of the funny part.
Well, it's fine. Like, they skip over all that because they're like, time is a premium in this show. Like.
Right. But they gave us that scene with Davos and Melisandre, so that's nice. Then we go to a place called Runestone, which I didn't. Have we been here before? I didn't even know it was called that. I'm just using this again from the EW recaps, but
that's just probably what it's the Vale of Arryn, but they aren't at the Eyrie itself, right?
They're right. We had a nice intro this week with like the opening sequence of Game of Thrones had the Eyrie back in it. Did it have 2 new places? It was the Eyrie and no, I think it was the only new one that we saw. Well, not. It's not new. It's been in there before, but it's been a while since we've had a change in the lineup. So it's Runestone, I guess, is the part of the Eyrie where they're hanging out.
No, it's not part of the Eyrie. It's a different place, but whatever.
Oh, it's a different part. Okay, yeah. It's part of the Vale. Does that make sense?
The Vale of Arryn, yeah.
Okay. So he's being cared for by his bannerman Jon Royce, which is, I guess, like John but with a Y instead of a J. And so we get Littlefinger coming back, and he shows up out of nowhere. Been 4 episodes, we haven't seen him, and he starts fucking shit up like the second he arrives. Robin's grown up a little bit, so we always thought like all these kids that have been on the show.
Yeah, he just look a lot sprouted up.
Of course, he's still a little shit kid though, but and really bad at archery apparently.
He's really bad at just everything.
Yeah, just in general. So Littlefinger shows up. He gives him a cool gift. What's it called?
It's a falcon.
Some kind of falcon of some kind. Yeah. And James Hooper makes like I said, the EW guy makes a funny joke about saying he gets a present that he can't break by throwing it out the moon door. Which is fair. And anyway, so yeah, what happens here? Littlefinger comes back, gives him the Falcon, and if you're not paying attention here, you might get a little lost. There's a lot of information that's implied, but basically, last thing we remember seeing Littlefinger was when he dropped off Sansa at Winterfell. They had left
when he arranged the marriage.
He had left that early last season, the beginning of last season. They left the Eyrie, right? For that to happen.
Yeah.
Or was that at the beginning? Yeah. Okay. So when that happened, I guess no one knew where they were going, except for this Jon Royce guy. He knew what exactly? What are we supposed to know that he knew?
Okay.
Is he used?
So the story was that Littlefinger was taking Sansa to the Sisters, which is where Littlefinger grew up.
Oh. Okay.
That's like just back to his hometown, because the story was that he had been hiding her there beforehand.
Okay.
Right. And what he tells Bronze Jon Royce here is that they were attacked by Boltons and she was kidnapped.
Right, and that he was the only one who knew that they were going there.
Yeah.
Even though that's a lie. Right.
So it's implying that it's a whole big circle implying that Royce is actually the traitor who leaked the information. Right. Even though he's literally not at all. No, he's one of the most honorable men in the Seven Kingdoms. He wouldn't do it.
So I really is nothing worse than seeing like another shit kid with like power, right? So he's like basically he accuses Jon Royce of being a traitor, and then like this is a guy that's been taking care of this little shit for like his whole life practically, and he's like, oh, should we just throw him out the moon door? Because Uncle
Peter,
Uncle Littlefinger, Uncle Peter once thought it seemed like a good idea, and then because Peter's such a dink, he's like, well, no, we should give him a second chance, and blah blah blah. He's like, oh, fine, Well,
it's a way for him to solidify that loyalty. So
right.
Royce recognizes that Peter's in charge and has to pretty much do what he says. Robin's just the figurehead,
Yeah. So, what do you actually make of this? So, if Littlefinger, he's saying that it wasn't, he lied about selling off Sansa. So that's one thing, right? Mm-hmm. So, do you think that he's because at the end of this whole conversation, he says, okay, well, we found out that Sansa was married to Ramsay and then escaped Winterfell. So he's caught up all the information. He fills in Jon Royce and says, and I guess Robin too, but he doesn't care, that they need to go help her, right?
That the Vale will go to war.
Yeah, they're a big, they're very powerful. Fighting.
Well, the thing is, you have to remember, they're one of the few armies. It's the Vale and Dorne are the only ones that, as far as I can remember, that were not a part of the War of the Five Kings. So their armies have been largely untouched by all the warring that's been going on for the last however many seasons, right?
Yeah.
So their army is intact.
Uh-huh. And as Littlefinger said, it's time for them to enter the fray. But why is he making this decision? Because he was the one who sold off Sansa in the first place. So did he expect her to try to escape or get killed, maybe?
Well, no, I don't think he expected her to do anything. I think he wanted her to stay there, but that marriage was all part of his longer game. I think he was always planning to usurp the Boltons in the north.
Right.
Well, he has Robin in the Vale, and he, in theory, could have Sansa in Winterfell and have control over those two houses. He also is technically the liege lord of Harrenhal right now in the Riverlands. So without having any name, he has money, but he doesn't have a powerful name. He would have more power than almost anyone in the Seven Kingdoms if he were able to accomplish all that.
Right. Okay. But you'd have to. So I guess maybe the plan was okay. So regardless if she escaped or not, his plan was to come back and say that he was set upon by Bolton men, that she was married to Ramsay, and that they need to go help. And that way he gets his cake and he get.
Well, yes and no.
Leaving Sansa there, he gets an opportunity to use the Knights of the Vale to actually, like you said, consolidate power. Okay, that makes sense. But again, lots of implied information in this about who knew what and what was. it's always great to have Littlefinger back. These scenes are always fun to talk about, even when they're only like 5 minutes. And then we head to King's Landing, and we have Marjorie in her cell, and we have the High Sparrow and her have a nice conversation, a nice chat, and this is where we get the name for the episode, the Book of the Stranger. And basically, we kind of learn more about how their religion works, a little bit. And,
not really, but yeah.
Well, I mean, you get that line about like walking through a graveyard and seeing, realizing that it was all for nothing or whatever. What we really learn is the High Sparrow's like origin story, his backstory, according to him. I don't know. There might be a different version, but according to him, he grew up as like he was a shoemaker, a cobbler. He made nice shoes for rich people, and he had a really big party one day, and then woke up and decided that he was just going to become a pious man. That's literally how it went. He said, "I had a big party. I woke up and everyone was drunk and naked, and I said, wow, this is stupid,' and then left." So
I mean, that's the abridged version. I actually really like the way that whole sequence was written. I thought that was well done. But that's the gist of it.
I mean, yeah. I was gripped of this.
For sure.
Listen, I have the whole story memorized now, so it's not like I did give the abridged version. But I mean, do you buy that as a realistic explanation as to why, if that story is true, that's why he's a fanatic, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've always thought there's something more
under
the surface there. Yeah,
I think there still is. That's why I don't know. I don't buy this whole story.
No, yeah, for sure. There's definitely more to it than that. Yeah, but because he does have his own political machinations. Like he knows how to play the game. He's not strictly about the gods. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Although maybe he is. It's hard to tell with him. That's the problem.
And maybe yeah. There's definitely more to his character.
So why does he bring out Marjorie to have this conversation in the first place? What's his game here?
Well, I think he mentions to her a couple of times, like she started along the path, right? So this is her, or him rather, preparing her for that walk of atonement that Cersei did. So it's him like, yeah, you've started along the path. This is your next step. This is the only way to get, to get better, essentially. And then in her mind, it's the only way to get back to her power position in order to fix all this.
And then he lets her see his brother, which is another power play. She says that she's letting her see him, to break him down even more. But I didn't really see it that way. I mean, it just with the way the scene plays out, and she's like, she basically lays out saying, he's trying to break you more by letting me see you. Don't let them. But he's already broken. Loras, that is.
Yes.
He's being beaten all the time. I mean, this is all implied, but he's pretty messed up. So, I mean, it's all going to come to a head pretty soon. I don't really need any more of these like dungeon scenes for a little while. Would be fine with me.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
But we've had a scene with the High Sparrow talking to somebody in every episode, I think, this season, in that room that with like the altar, So, and where do we know where that's supposed to be? This dungeon-y area.
Yeah, I would assume it's in the Great Sept of Baelor. Yeah.
Okay, it's not clear, but it seems like it's somewhere around there. Either way, we know this is all going to come to a head anyway because of what's going on with not Marjorie, but with Cersei and all of them. So we have another scene. We have a scene with Cersei and Tommen following the one. Yeah, unless there's anything else you want to say about the High Sparrow?
That's about it.
Okay. So we have a scene with Cersei and Tommen. Sorry, what was that?
No. I said we got to move this along.
Okay, good call. Yeah. Yes, you got places to be.
I got it.
There's a reason we're doing this early. That's right. So Cersei and Tommen. The takeaway from this scene being that Tommen reveals that the information to Cersei that they are planning to do the Walk of Atonement for Marjorie soon. And that they had a conversation there. Then Tommen says something about how Cersei's like, you don't really like Marjorie, do you? And it's like, Jesus Christ, like it's like the most obvious thing in the world. So so that happens, and then if we're hurrying things along, her and Jaime go to the small council meeting, and things go a little bit differently than they did last week, where although Olenna did get another shot in, every time she opens her mouth, it's always jab. Yeah. So even though she gets another shot in, they actually agree to work together on this. And the plan is what exactly? Walk us through this quick.
Well, I think what they say there is, because the Tyrells have the largest army in the immediate area, they basically just come in, take over. The Lannister men will stand aside and not fight back. And the city guard will also stand aside because they are under Lannister control. Mm-hmm. So it'll basically be the Highgarden soldiers come in, rescue Marjorie and Loras. And if anybody were to stand up to them, it would be the poor fellows or the Faith Militant.
Right. Okay. And do we have a clear understanding of what the numbers of how many of them?
I wouldn't be able to say that. There's a lot of Faith Militant, or rather, there's a lot of poor fellows, and not a lot of actual fighters there.
Okay.
Like a lot of just like beggars that aren't going to do much against that.
Wouldn't we do not against an actual army.
Tyrell army, right?
Okay.
But the other part of that is that it takes all the power away from the High Sparrow, and like Jaime says, in a perfect world, he'd be killed in the fray there.
Right. It's never going to go that smoothly.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the way they talk about it, because like this would there would no longer be any trial with the Mountain, which is something we were all looking forward to, but whatever.
Yeah.
But they're referencing civil war. Like, if the common folk of King's Landing decide to side with, the High Sparrow and the Faith, that could be a problem for everybody involved.
I always get the impression that everything that's happening in like King's Landing, and they're talking about, because they're like, it's the Iron Throne of the Seven Kingdoms, whatever, but that all their problems that they have here that they're dealing with the Faith Militant and I guess not Dorne, not so much, but specifically with this stuff, is that it seems like localized to that actual city of King's Landing. Like I don't know how much that stuff is affecting literally anything else. Like nothing that's happening people in Dorne don't care. Like, I guess there's Highgarden and all that kind of stuff, and then closer to them. But even then, I don't get the impression that anything that the High Sparrow is doing is having any effect on the kingdom as a whole, and more just on the city itself.
Well, it's tough because we don't really see too much of the kingdom other than King's Landing, right?
Yeah.
Dorne, like you said, the Eyrie, and the North are kind of more separated. They're isolated from the rest of the kingdom, right? And we haven't been to Highgarden, we haven't been anywhere in the Reach that I can think of, or really the Stormwind. We've been to Storm's End once, but like not in this capacity, right?
Yeah, we've never even been to the Lannisters.
No, Castle Rock, no.
Castle Rock, no. So,
so the poor fellows and the beggars, all these people, the Sparrows under the High Sparrow, throughout the books, they're constantly on the road. They're traveling. They're everywhere. They're not just in King's Landing. A lot of them are making a pilgrimage to King's Landing because that's where the High Sparrow is. But they are literally everywhere.
Okay.
So it's an issue for the whole realm, not just King's Landing.
And we shall also mention, it's important to note that this whole plan is going to be done without the king's knowledge, without Tommen's, because he said that's the whole reason the Lannister men have to stand down, because they've been ordered not to make any moves against the High Sparrow or the Faith Militant to protect Marjorie, because that's still their blue chip, in their back pocket. So that's all interesting. I imagine this plan is not going to go as smoothly as we think. I imagine maybe Lancel might get killed. Like we don't
Loras.
I don't really care about. No. Well, I'm talking about Lancel. Because that was a part of Kevin. That's his son, right? We're supposed to care. I don't care. I don't care about Lancel at all.
Well, what would be interesting, I think, like Jamie says, in a perfect world, the High Sparrow dies. I think Cersei would be more than happy if Marjorie was also a victim of this, right?
Yeah.
They still overthrow the Sparrow. The power goes back to Lannister hands, but now there's no Tyrell power at all.
That's true, because then there's well, especially because if Loras is killed, especially that, but I mean, if she's the queen, was murdered, that'd be even worse. I don't know. There's a lot of what ifs in this situation.
Well, like what I'm saying is, I could easily see Cersei paying somebody to try to kill Marjorie during it all, and then blame the High Sparrow, and that would because she was so close with the poor people, with all her charity and stuff like that. Like that would be an affront, and the people would reject the High Sparrow and all that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that's all speculation.
Yep. As everything we do is here. Yeah. Okay, so in Meereen, this is interesting stuff. Tyrion invited the leaders of the other cities in Slaver's Bay for a meeting, basically, to try to deal with this whole Sons of the Harpy situation. And so basically, it's compromise. There's not a lot. You don't see a lot of compromise in Game of Thrones. He's basically saying, we agree that slavery is terrible and really shouldn't happen, but we also understand the realities of the situation. We'll give you 7 years, he's saying to the other slavers, to change over your business to something else and get rid of slavery within 7 years. And in exchange, you pull out your support for the Sons of the Harpy. They always say, we're not supporting them. And he's like, yeah, I know, but you'll do it anyway.
I love that.
So I got the impression from the brief chance I had to look on Twitter and different things I was reading that people think that Tyrion might have overstepped here a little.
Probably. I don't think Daenerys would have. Yeah, Daenerys would never have done that.
So how do you think this is gonna end for him in with this situation in particular?
Well, are we working on the assumption that Daenerys is coming back? Right?
Well, I mean, duh.
Because she, later in the episode, we noticed that she's also changed quite a bit. So she might not have the same opinions as before.
I don't know if that's true. Seems like she's pretty steadfast with her resolve on freeing people. So
yeah.
I don't know if that...
We can get to that Daenerys stuff later. In terms of Tyrion, he definitely oversteps, but this is a good example of why he's an interesting character. You know, he's not strictly a good guy. He's not just fighting to free all the slaves. He's making certain sacrifices all for his personal gain with his goals in mind. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's what I like about him. He's a complicated character, and lately the series had been making him into too much of a good guy, too much of just a hero, which is not.
Well, I mean, is he? What is this? How is this?
Because this? At the end of the day, I don't think he really cares about Meereen at all. Position. Yeah, well, the idea is this will maintain Daenerys' position there. When she comes back, all they care about is her going to Westeros. They don't care about Meereen or the slaves or anybody on this side of the world. All he cares about is going to Westeros and burning Castle Rock to the ground, right?
Is that, you think that's what it is? It seems like he's a little bit... I don't know if it's that...
Well, no, of course it's more layered than that. It's not so black and white, but that's because he's a complicated character, right? So I don't know... In terms of the immediate future, this just protects his position in Meereen because nobody knows when Daenerys is coming back.
Well, if anything, it weakens his position in Meereen because Missandei and Grey Worm, although reluctant, did agree with him in this situation. But if he kept down that path, you might get the impression that the two of them might not back him up in if there was if they had to, at the end of the day. What else do we have here? So yeah, he gives them women, which is kind of like prostitutes, I guess, kind of, which I thought I thought that might have been where the part where you might have stepped a little bit too far. I guess they're free. They're not slaves.
Well, no, they're not slaves because he paid for them. Right. I mean, he bought them as prostitutes, I guess.
All right, so there's that part. I did as much as I said. I'm not sure where I fall. I think it's actually going to work out just fine for him. As much as Dany's not going to like it, but I think he's able, like you said, he's generally able to talk himself out of worse situations than this. And this is easy. Like you can easily like explain where you're coming from in this situation, you know. So besides, she was gone. What was he supposed to do? So
yeah, it was that or go to war with them, right? Like.
And they already explained in last episode that wasn't an option. You can't leave and go to war with them because then you leave Meereen unprotected, you know? So we'll see. I think this might be I think some of these people who are predicting that he might have gone a little bit too far with this, I think things are going to be just fine. Funny, Varys was in the scene with the meeting, but he didn't have a single line, which I was like, wow, that kind of sucks. It seemed like he took that eunuch jab a lot harsher than he normally does. Yeah. Okay, so anything else in Meereen that you want to mention? I did really like the scene where Missandei and Grey Worm in their own language, which you imagine that which we know he hasn't fully grasped yet.
Yeah.
Is like they back him up, which I like. I guess it's in one of those. It's great because if you've ever been in a situation where, you have a friend who speaks a different language than you, and you go somewhere with them, and they meet up with their friends who also only speak that language or only barely speak English, maybe. And they have a conversation back and forth about something in their own language. You have no idea what they're talking about, but you can kind of get the gist of what they're talking about, either whether they're talking about you or something that you were just talking about, and you can kind of pick up on what's happening even if you don't know exactly what they're being said. They played that, like, I guess Peter Dinklage did a really good job of playing that. It's like kind of getting what was being said, but not fully grasping it. And just kind of
understands a couple words here and there.
Okay. So, back to Winterfell. I say back, but to Winterfell. We have Ramsay and Osha shows up. She's been cleaned up. Osha always looks really nice when she's been cleaned up. That's but that was, she knows that. Cause that was the same thing.
She
that
uses that to her
2.
advantage,
Yeah. So I kind of knew as soon as this was happening that I didn't know, but my gut was telling me that this would be the last time we'd see her. And I wasn't wrong. I feel like every time we see Ramsay, he's like cutting something or eating something, or like there's the scene with the sausages, of course. There's
a lot of knife play with him.
Yeah.
And he was skinning an apple.
Yeah. And he was talking about his sigil being a flayed man, and how I love that. She's like, well, do you eat them after? I was like, well, no. He's like, well, okay, well then it's not that bad. And then I had a moment of hope where I was like, oh, maybe she's gonna actually get a shot in on Ramsay. Maybe even if he doesn't die, maybe she's gonna maybe cause some damage. But nope. I'm not really sure what Ramsay was playing at here. Just get rid of people out of the way.
Yeah, it was. He definitely let her get too close too.
Yeah.
But
what if she already had a knife? I mean, as unlikely as it is, but either way, what was the point of this whole? Other than to establish that he's still still a bad guy. Yeah, we know that. We literally you literally don't need to show him murder anyone else for us to know he's he is absolutely the worst.
I think a lot of people probably saw Osha as Rickon's only savior, or his only hope in Winterfell. So without her, he's literally on his own.
She was playing up that she didn't care, but it seemed it was just she was just playing that. She obviously did care.
I see this as the show they have to get rid of people. That's just a budgetary thing. There's no time for it.
Fat. Trim the fat. Although I wouldn't consider the actress who plays Osha to be any kind of fat. So yeah, I wish we would have seen if you're gonna show us Ramsay, like we get the letter later on, right? Or then in the next scene that he sends, not by bird, by the way, but like him writing that letter, or like in front of Rickon or something. Like, if you're gonna have to show us Ramsay for some reason, and which you didn't have to, but it's interesting to show him be, you know, a scoundrel, and then then get the letter next scene. Like, that does definitely like add to how that works. Like, you're showing Ramsay, and then you're showing the letter that he wrote, even if you didn't show him writing the letter. It still makes it more, you know, the connection more palpable. But I like the way they did it is fine, I guess. It's nothing great. So we get the next scene is Castle Black, and it's everyone's sitting around eating dinner, and we get the letter from. Again, I like that it was sent by a messenger had the white flag, comes in on his horse, drops off the letter.
Oh yeah.
And
can't imagine that would be faster.
I don't think it's about faster. I think it's about. I don't know it's about I don't think it's about speed. Like, he might have sent that letter last week. You know, for all I know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I think it was more about, like, it's like a kind of a show of. And it's not a show of power, but like, this letter is important. I didn't send it by Raven. I sent it with like one of my men.
Make sure it gets there with my trusted man, sort of thing.
And also, the letter itself is a lot bigger than a Raven normally carries. To be fair, Ravens usually carry like short messages. Generally, it seems like that's the impression I've gotten. This was like a full blown letter. By the way, as much as he's a dick, well written letter, very menacing, very menacing.
Jesus,
if you're gonna be menacing via
a little
text, that was a good one.
It's some great sentence structure there. It was depraved.
Yeah. So you have again more shipping with Tormund and and
like
Brienne.
some very overt
it's like
stares.
And Pod gives him a look too, which is kind of funny. And so anyway, they're eating dinner. They get the letter, and he reads the letter out loud. John does. He tries to like save Sansa's virtue to some degree, but she takes the letter. Sansa, continuing her being a badass this season,
she's good.
Reads the rest of it, and is finally able to. I guess this is where things get really interesting, because things are now really coming to a head. So he says, Ramsay threatens basically everyone. He says, "I'm going to come and take back my wife, murder all the wildlings, their kids, the wives, the babies, and
just a bunch of crazy stuff." Yeah.
Right, and I'm gonna have all my men rape Sansa. You'll watch, like spoon out your eyeballs, whatever. So Sansa gives like a kind of like I heard 5,000 once when he was talking. So his numbers are probably stronger than that, since he has the backing of the Umbers and the Karstarks.
And the Karstarks, yeah.
So he's probably close.
So they're outnumbered.
Yeah, outnumbered. We get Tormund saying he's got maybe 2,000 men that can fight.
Which, again, I got the impression they should have much more than that. But like he said, there's a lot of women and children with them.
Yeah.
But the Wildling army was supposed to be like 100,000 strong.
Well, it was, but then Hardhome happened.
Yeah, I guess.
First, no, it was a couple things. So they fought the wall. They lost a bunch of people at the wall, and then they lost a bunch of people when Stannis rode in. So, and then Hardhome.
I thought they had more left over. Anyways,
and not important. That's not. I mean, it's important. It's just not it's not that important. So 2,000 men, and so Sansa is like, again, back to the convincing Jon that something needs to happen. I don't know what changed between the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode, other than the letter that there's like
the revelation that Rickon's there.
Threat now.
He mentions that Rickon's there in the letter, and that's what changes Jon's mind.
Well, and he's skeptical that they have Rickon at all. Sansa knows, like, come on, he wouldn't say it if he didn't, right? Which is,
I mean, he probably
I like that.
would,
She's
but...
like yeah, like I mean, I like that, like the idea that she knows, like Ramsay well enough now that like he has him. We know he has him. Come on, don't try to weasel your way out of this. And so convinces Jon he needs to help. What's the plan here? So they have 2,000 men at the wall. So where do they rally support? Because 2,000 is obviously not enough.
Not enough. Well, what she does say in that whole sequence is that he's the last remaining Stark heir, even though he wasn't technically a Stark. Like he could rally the North Men that are still loyal to the Stark name to do this.
And how many?
There's
houses,
plenty of other
many,
houses. I don't know exactly how many houses, but there's plenty of other smaller houses in the North, older houses that would be loyal to the Starks.
And there's still that one other big one, that other big house that you mentioned that the name dropped a couple weeks ago. Yeah, so that might definitely will come into play.
Yeah, they mentioned the Manderleys by name. I assume that means they're going to be in the series, and they reference that there are other houses. So like, there's like the Flints and they have like very like mountain stone type names. They all live in the mountains of the north there, but they are like tiny compared to the Boltons and the Umbers. So the other thing to remember is that Littlefinger and the Knights of the Vale are coming, and they're going to we're assuming they're going to be on Sansa's side.
Well, they already said they were, and and Littlefinger mentions, he name drops Jon in that conversation he has at the Eyrie, basically saying, we think she probably went north. Everyone assumes that if Sansa leaves, it's like it's the worst kept secret of all time.
Yeah.
If she leaves, she's probably going north to the Wall, where Jon's the Lord Commander, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's exactly what happened. Worst kept secret. Okay, so that's where she is now. You'd have to hope that he can rally. And how would you rally them? Would you send out ravens to the houses hoping for support?
I think probably go in person as best you can to the larger houses, because they're leaving the Wall anyways. There's nothing for them at the Wall anymore. The Night's Watch has to stay there. Take the wildlings and go. Everyone will be happier for it.
Okay. Who do you leave in charge of Castle Black?
Oh, it seems like he's left Ed in charge.
But is that how that works? That's not really how that works.
Who else is even there? Like, there aren't
I don't know.
actual,
I get the
named characters there.
Yeah, there's no one. I love how he's he gets the letters, a letter for you, Lord Commander. He's like, oh, yeah, I told you guys I'm not Lord Commander already. Yeah, okay. So,
and the other thing to remember about this war that we didn't mention actually is that Melisandre is now like strictly behind Jon, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Her magic clearly has power that she doesn't fully know how to use, so that don't count that out.
It seemed odd that Davos would give her that jab about Haying, I thought Stannis was the prince that was promised or whatever, and she was like, ugh. She rolled her eyes at him basically, and walked off. But it's just the characterization there is kind of weird. He was just he just had her bring back Jon back from the dead, had to convince her to do it, and now you're gonna start questioning her visions and stuff. You literally just saw her bring someone back to life. That seems strange to me as well. So, I think might as well we have to hurry up here, wrap up pretty quick. But I just got to mention again that the stuff in the north is by far the most interesting storyline that we have going. It's just not even close. I think night and day compared to what's going on everyone else. No, up until today, yeah, but the North stuff has been interesting consistently for the last 3 episodes.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Okay, so we're in Vaes Dothrak. We'll just kind of hurry through to the good part here. Daario and Jorah. Dario's still bugging Jorah about about just having
being old.
Hots for being old and having the hots for Dany and stuff. And Daario learns that he has grayscale. He kind of eases up a bit on him, and then they sneak into the camp. They did a pretty good job sneaking around until 2 dudes randomly walk up on them, and you're like, oh, we're just merchants and we're selling wine, and then for some reason they didn't believe him at all. It seemed fairly believable. He's just like, no,
language.
You're right. You're not merchants, and it's instantly and then, man, Jorah gets the shit beat out of him. It's not even close. The guy doesn't even move. Basically, he stands in one place and just totally wrecks.
For sure.
And then Dario wrecks too. Like he snaps that guy's neck, chases him down, snaps his neck, and then stabs the other guy, and then to hide that there's a stab wound, smashes his skull in.
It's awesome.
And then I love later that we learned that it totally worked. Like the plan totally worked. Where they're like, "Oh, he wasn't stabbed. His head was smashed in with a rock." And then they're like, "Oh, well, it's fine. People get smashed. Yeah, shit happens. Oh well." And then they go on to talk about other stuff. So then Dany goes for a quick pee, and she says to make water. I thought that I've never heard them call it that before. I thought that was kind of funny. And they meet up and they said, "Hey, we can try to escape now." But she's like, "No, I got a plan." And to be honest, I had no idea where this was going to go.
Well, there's no way to predict that. Yeah,
there's no way. There's just no way to predict this. So she goes into this meeting with all the Khals, and they're deciding what to do with her. She has like this like pretty badass look on her face the whole time, and she just starts talking shit. If I can be so colloquial, she starts talking shit to these guys, saying you're no Khals, you're just pretenders,
you're
basically.
Small little men.
Small men, and then proceeds to burn down the hut that they're in, using her ability to not get burnt, be unburnt, which apparently is not a thing in the books, is what I understand. She can. Is. Okay, so this is what I was reading, is that that surviving the fire with the dragons was like a one-time thing, and then she's not just immune to fire, because like why is her brother then not?
Okay, yeah, it only happens the one time in the books, and there's a lot of blood magic around that. I don't think that she can just she's not a pyro mage or anything like that. Like she can't put her hands in fire. Although
yeah, she can. In the show she can.
In the show she can. The reason that it doesn't happen for Viserys is that he was no true Targaryen. He was like they reference he was more of a worm than a dragon sort of thing.
Yeah, but like that's just in name only. Like he was still a Targaryen.
Okay, so what they say about Targaryen, the way it works is when a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. On one side is greatness and the other madness, I think it is, something like that. So the idea is that Viserys got the short end of the stick. Anyways, Daenerys, like this is all part of why people believe that she is Azor Ahai, that she's the Jesus figure. She's gonna save the world, sort of thing. It's not gonna be that simple.
No,
but it is kind of weird. Like it almost looks like she's like controlling the fire, and that's stupid.
I mean, it was weird, like the way the whole scene is as badass it was kind of strange. Okay, so they're in this hut, and there's 4 of these torches just sitting there, really tippy ones too. Like,
well, they're braziers. That's normal.
Okay, that's fine. So she knocks them over, but like instantly, like the guys start dying like instantly. Like,
yeah. Well, that's what I said afterwards. Like, it's like if she got Dario and Jorah to help her, they must have put like oil or pitch or something. Like it was ridiculous for this fire to spread like that, right?
Yeah, like it's crazy. Like it just like spread so fast. They like a beam collapsed on. Like I audibly laughed. I lolled for real as 2 of these Khals who are supposed to be like these great warriors. They're running, and then a beam just like breaks over top of their head and drops and kills them. Like. Oh. And that was like 2 seconds after she knocked the fire over. And again, this is super cool stuff we're talking about. Really awesome. But it just seemed really strange the way that, I don't know if it was the way it was shot or like the amount of time it took. But like it just really quick. Like fire doesn't work that way, Yeah. I mean, again, everything's made of wood, but still. Anyway, she comes out and that you get everyone bows. Is this all believable to you?
Once again.
Is this all believable to you? I don't want to. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's kind of weird for the Dothraki. I watch the show every week with our mutual friends Eli and Rochelle, and they were saying afterwards too that like the Dothraki have clearly a strong dislike for magic. I don't understand why they would just bow to this. Like she just murdered all the people. I guess the idea is though that there's no way to know that she didn't murder anybody. She just survived a fire, as far as anyone's concerned, right?
Yeah.
Nobody saw what happened on the inside. So they are a very superstitious people, and that's a pretty clear omen, I guess, is that all their leaders are burnt, and she comes out of it perfectly fine, like she's meant to be their leader.
Yeah, but like the bowing thing, it's like it's really visually like arresting. It's really cool to see. I don't buy that that's something that the Dothraki would do.
Exactly, yeah. The Dothraki wouldn't bend their knee like that because that's just not part of their culture. It makes sense for the slaves to do it when she frees them all. This is entirely different.
It just seemed like one of those, like, we knew that something was going to happen. Like you had made the prediction that, like, well, how is this storyline going to play out? Is she going to somehow come out of this with the whole Dothraki horde as her, like, as an army, right? And we're like, well, I mean, I guess that's kind of how the way the show has been built up. But it seems kind of weird, like, how's that going to play out? How's she going to do that? So this is how it happens, right? And it's like, it just doesn't feel satisfying, you know?
It doesn't feel like she earned anything, yeah.
It doesn't feel earned. It's like, it's really cool, yeah, great, you have a horde. It looks really, the whole scene was visually awesome. It's always cool seeing a naked woman stand in a fucking fire. And
that's a weird thing to say.
It's just really badass. Like, it's just like,
okay.
The idea that she's naked is that even though she's naked, she still has a lot of power over these people. You know what I mean? And that, like, yeah, it's obviously it's a callback to season 1, which is also awesome because that moment was amazing and way smaller scale. There's like 10 people there that day. You know, so now you have. I mean, yeah, it just seems like we've seen this play out a couple times before. This one was the least believable of all of them. I guess now she heads back to Meereen and yells at Tyrion probably, and then they head for Westeros. Maybe I'm not sure where they go from here. But I mean, either way, she's got a whole horde.
Well, like a lot of people online will say stuff similar to this, like. This kind of represents her going back to her fire and blood side of her, like her lineage, like her Targaryen side. Because for the longest time in Meereen, it was annoying, and the reason we thought it was boring is because she was kind of pussyfooting around trying to make peace with everybody, marrying his daughter. She didn't want to marry him; she just did it for the political gain and like trying to play that game. And like nobody really cares about what's going on in Meereen. Nobody really wants her to be
I totally
like this,
forgot about that. I completely forgot that she got married to that guy.
But like all that kind of flies in the face of how she used to be. And then, like, people are like see this as a sign that she's going back to the Targaryen stuff, and then she's more focused on getting to Westeros and doing all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
Which I'm all for it because I'm kind of sick of Slaver's Bay.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those like, just playing it. It's everything that this season's been about. Just things are moving a lot more quickly here, right? You know, like who would have thought that we would have got, Jon and Sansa meet by episode 4. You know, no one would have predicted that. You know, who would have guessed that Jon would have been brought back to life by episode 2? You know, who would have guessed that? All these things. So it's like everything's moving very quickly. You know, everyone in Dorne is dead. You have there's a lot of people we know are died in this season.
I'm pretty sure this season, every episode, I think there's been not major death, but like Osha's the
today.
One
Osha was the one today. But that was someone we knew, right? Even though we haven't seen him for like 3 seasons.
The only thing I don't like about it is like almost all of them have been like a, talk, surprise knife in the gut or whatever. Like, just out of nowhere.
Some of them feels a little rushed. Like it's like, well, we've known this guy for so long, and this is how you're gonna get rid of him. Like it's one of those. I mean, yeah, that's how Game of Thrones works. But at the same time, it's like if you're gonna do this many, at least make some of them cool, you know. So, with that all being said. And I'm sure people are going to give a shit about being down on the Dany thing. Again, really cool. Didn't feel super earned. That would be our I guess you could say our criticism here. But as a whole, let's wrap this up. Yeah. What did you make of the episode as a whole?
Well, I love this episode. This might be my favorite episode this season, I think.
Yeah, I think me too.
I think they did a good job. We always talk about the pacing, a decent job with the pacing, but each scene felt significant for the most part. It didn't feel like there was a lot of wasted time. Maybe some of the stuff in King's Landing was a bit too long, but like for the most part, each sequence was able to end with a sort of either cliffhanger or like kind of epic moment, and it just helps you through the whole episode. I was enjoying every minute of it.
And like you said, like so we're going into episode 5 next week, right? And you know, we'd always said that like this is how you set things. This is how you set the table, right? We always talk, oh, table setting is boring. Like, let's go. It was a lot of table setting, but in like a really cool things are coming to a head kind of way. Like by maybe not next episode, but by episode 6, there's gonna be some kind of confrontation between some major players that they've been teasing for a year, 2 years now. So that's pretty big, and like I said, there's a lot of positive stuff to take out of this episode, like a lot of happiness. So you gotta take that when you can get it. And it's my favorite episode this season so far too. I might rewatch it now. I obviously didn't get a chance to rewatch it before you saw it. I mean, I watched it last night, and then I had to be up super early to record today, so didn't get a chance to be as prepared as I like to be. But that's okay. I think that, overall, I think it worked out okay. Again, apologies for being super. I think it was a little rough at the start. Again, well, I
think we both
really admit that. Yeah, but it came together at the end. It came together.
I'm alright.
On that note, I think you have to get out of here, I imagine, right?
Pretty soon. No Bran, no Arya this episode. That's important to note.
Yeah, no, I was expecting them to like follow up with that Tower of Joy stuff. Actually, I was kind of waiting for that to happen.
That too.
And that didn't happen at all.
Hopefully,
so I guess that's still coming.
It's kind of good for them to space that out because, well, I mean, maybe that's more personal for me. That's like one of the things I'm most excited about right now.
Well, it's one of those things like. People are like, well, book readers have been waiting for this reveal for like literally like 10 years or however long the first book has been out.
First book came out in 96.
Like a long time, 20 years.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, and show watchers are like, well, now I want to know. You're telling me I have to wait 2 weeks to find this information out? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, you have no idea.
Which is I thought that's kind of funny. All right, so. On that note, we will be back next week for episode 5. I don't know what the name is offhand.
I didn't look it up.
I usually have that on ready to go. But we'll be back next week. In the meantime, check out the website, towerbabblepodcast.com. That's BABBLE, by the way, not the biblical version. And send us any emails, questions you might have to our Gmail, towerbabblepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter @TowerBabbleCast. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast. And we also just released, you can subscribe on iTunes, rate and review us on iTunes. That's always huge. And yeah, so next week, so I'm looking at this next week's episode.
Is called The Door.
Yeah, The Door.
The Door.
So,
that's a...
I mean, there's been more inspiring names.
For sure. Probably could have put a little bit more effort into that.
Is it like, do you think it has something to do with like Arya's storyline? You thought this one was about Arya's storyline, but this one might actually be about Arya's storyline. I mean,
Arya, maybe Bran, like, but it's so vague that it could be anything, right?
Oh, maybe it's like behind the door of the Tower of Joy, huh?
Yeah, right? Something like that. Something to do with one of Bran's visions, or it could be a door in the Hall of Faces or whatever, Tower of Black and White.
Yeah.
What's it called? House of Black and White.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And like I was saying, last thing, and we'll kick you guys out. We just recorded our Captain America Civil War review, and that's on our full show, the Tower Babble podcast, our flagship, the one that started it all. If you're only subscribed to us as the Game of Thrones podcast on iTunes, we have another feed that has both the Game of Thrones and our regular shows in there. The Tower Babble podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and all that good stuff. So subscribe on that. That's always a lot of fun. And like I said, we'll be back next week. We'll see you then. This week's Game of Thrones theme cover is a EDM cover by Bomb Bay. That's 2 words, and all his work is on YouTube.